Hi, Karen Sullivan here at Life Health More, and my website is lifehealthmore.com, and welcome to another May show about food. Today we're talking about grains and grain, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I want to share something with you. I teach classes. I'm a personal trainer, a fitness consultant. I do coaching. And this morning I worked at the St. Peter's Recplex and taught classes in cardio interval. And then I do a weight training class. And then I do children's classes, and preschoolers can exercise, and mommy and me. If you live in St. Peter's and you have never had the opportunity to bring your children to those classes, they're at 10:30 to 11 for preschoolers and 11 to 11:30 for mommy and me. I love it. We have a great deal of fun. So I wanted to share with you this picture. This was done by, see that? That's my puppy. And then the red dress is the little girl who drew it, and the blue is me. And that is by Lou. And she brings me pictures almost every single Monday. And this one included my puppy because I had shown the class a picture last week of her. So that's really kind of fun. So what is it that I'm doing? How am I doing this? What is this all about, and why do I do it? Well, I have been working with people for, actually it's been little over 25 years. Feels way longer, but that's how long it's been. But I've been in the industry and working out for longer because I started in the 80s doing competitive bodybuilding and powerlifting. And I worked out. I was single. I didn't have a life. So I lifted. I was in the gym 6 days a week usually. And so that was my life, and I did that. But when I started in the 90s with doing coaching, and I worked as a coach for a swim team in Williamsburg, Virginia, WAC. Hey, WAC, how are you guys? I also learned specific things about doing therapeutic work, working with people with strokes or someone who has had Parkinson's disease or even, MS, those sorts of things. So if it has movement disorders, and that's kind of my specialty, in addition to just regular fitness work. So what I decided this year, 2018, was that I wanted to try to help everybody to be the best possible version of themselves. And to do that, I'm touching base on everything, whether it's exercise or meditation. And if you haven't seen my shows, go back and look on this Facebook page, Life Health More, and you will see more stories, more shows that I've done. Now on YouTube, my channel is Karen Sullivan, and they're also posted there, so you'll have a chance to read and catch up. So talking about grains and gluten. I have an issue of not being able to eat grain. And it's taken me a while to really recognize what the problem was, because of course the buzzword and the catchword for everybody is, I can't eat gluten. And everybody is like, oh, well, when I say, well, no, I'm sorry, I don't eat bread. You can't eat gluten. No. Well, my problem is I can't eat wheat. I can't have wheat. I don't do well with grains at all. So I felt like it was important for me to get into this because I think people might have more problems with grains than they recognize right off the top of the head. Okay. So that's why I really am a big proponent of everybody using a journal and tracking your food. My book, The Zen of Weight Loss, talks about that it's really important to be the person that's investigating your food. You eat, you write down what it is, and you track and see how you feel afterward, an hour after, the next day perhaps, and see what happens to your body. So gluten is just one component of grain, okay? And there can be health problems that are arising from gluten, but it can also be from some of the other things in it, and like abdominal pain, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, vomiting. I'm looking at my notes here. We have also elevated liver functions. You believe that? It's true. The AST and the ALT in the liver function, when they do that testing, can be elevated. You can get joint pain, which that is something that happens with me. Fatigue. Hello, I have clients who have a problem and complain about fatigue, and they'll go out and eat a pasta meal or have a big sub or something, and it's just recognize that it's probably the grain. You at least need to put in your journal that I got really exhausted after I ate. Okay. Some of the other things is we're talking about tingling in hands and feet can also have an itchy skin. Those can be symptoms that happen from either gluten or some of the other things that are in the grain. It could be a food allergy. So those are things you really need to think about. Okay. Now, I have not had a diagnosis to say whether I have celiac disease or not. I do not believe that I do, because I don't think that I have symptoms of celiac disease, which is really a lot more chronic and a lot more of an issue than I have. I have the joint pain, I get the blood sugar issues and everything, but people can also have IBS and migraines. Type 1 diabetes is sometimes, it seems to be a correlation, type 1 diabetes and grain issues are correlated together, which is unusual, but nonetheless, that's what the science says. Bone density, we've got an arthritis, and when we have anemia and problems with the thyroid. Now, whether you are non-celiac or celiac, these things can show up for you. And I think first we're going to talk about what gluten is. Now, gluten is a mixture of proteins, and they're elastic in texture. That's the stuff that makes it so that you can knead bread. It gives bread that dough, I should say, not bread, but gives dough that elasticity. Okay. And so that's gluten. Okay. That's what that is. Now, what about the brain and the grain? And I know the two big books out that talk about grain are, although there are several, but the two biggies are Wheat Belly and then also Grain Brain. And the book Grain Brain is the one that I'm going to emphasize during this show today, because I think that it addresses a whole lot of issues that we have now with health and memory and Alzheimer's and dementia sorts of issues. So if we think about that book is called Grain Brain, and it's by Dr. David Perlmutter, and I'll tell you more about him in a little bit. But the history of grain, talk about in early 1800s, when the Industrial Revolution, and we had a lot of people, and they were mass growing and producing breads and those sorts of things in mass. The mills really just exploded. And so what they started doing was they started removing the bran and remove the germ. Okay. Because the biggest reason is it would store on the shelf better. Those things would spoil, and without them, the grain was in the bread was storing better. Okay. So it's kind of like when you think about, and what happens with grains is it's insidious. It takes a while. If you think about a house, and our body is a house, okay? And as a house ages, little problems happen, and you get some electrical issues, and you get some plumbing issues, and the siding sort of falls off, and the shingles on the roof are in disrepair, and things just just deteriorates. And that's what happens with the body. Dr. Perlmutter talks about the fact that the grain makes it happen faster, and he believes that the shift in the diet that we had with these industrializing food and processing food, having more foods processed to be on the shelf and last, farmers markets you have to go every day. If you're in Europe and you are shopping, it's an everyday thing to go get your fresh produce that you need and your meats that you need for the day and cheeses and whatever else. But we as a civilization have decided that we need to make mass-produced foods. Is that real? Probably so. I don't want to get into that kind of an argument, but it is really important for you to recognize that the more easy dinners that you pick up for your families, it's really creating more of a problem in the health for your family. Okay. Now, it has also started, Perlmutter's pointing out that, the shift in the diet from being higher fat and lower carbohydrate to now we have high carbohydrate and low fat was when things started to go sideways. And he's talking about with the brain and the origin of brain-related maladies, okay? We're talking about not just dementia and Alzheimer's, but we're talking about migraines, okay, insomnia, anxiety, chronic headaches, depression, movement disorders. Now, that really disturbs me because under the umbrella of movement disorders comes things like Parkinson's disease and MS. And so I'm thinking, wow, that's extreme. But Perlmutter does know what he's talking about, okay? When we have these senior moments where we're having fear of dementia and Alzheimer's, it's very possibly because of the amount of grain that we're taking into our diet. Now, Perlmutter just reiterates over and over that we can do without it. We can really do without grain, okay? So who is this guy? Who is David Perlmutter, okay? He is a board-certified neurologist. He's a fellow of the American College of Nutrition and a founding member and fellow of the American Board of Integrative and Holistic Medicine. So he knows his stuff, and he's been practicing medicine for a very long time. So I think that what we need to remember is this is a man that knows what he's doing, and he is a neurosurgeon. He is a brain surgeon, in other words, and he has seen these changes and studied these changes in his patients. And for somebody that is MD but is also into holistic medicine, that's huge. That's really huge. So what we have to recognize, and Perlmutter reiterates this, is that our DNA is what determines how we process food. Did you realize that? So even in your family, if you have sensitivities to foods and everything, it's more than likely, oh, my mom probably had this. And if you check back, oh, yes, your mother did have this problem, okay? Well, how we process the food and how we respond to food, okay? Now, we understand that food is a powerful epigenetic modulator. Now, epigenetic modulator, I did some research on this to understand what that means. And what it's saying is that it's talking about DNA as an epigenetic modulator. It's a mouthful. That it changes the DNA. Now, it doesn't change the code, but it modifies certain genes that turn on and turn off, okay? So it can affect you in ways, and everybody is different and everybody is specific and your genes respond differently. But it could be possible that you have the genes that transmit perhaps obesity, that they're clicked on when you're having the foods that are grain and that sugars and those sorts of things. And it's just important for you to know this is happening at a cellular level, at a basic DNA level where these things can change. And so, hey guys, as I've said before, it's not all about diet and exercise. And if you're struggling with your weight, it may be because you haven't dug deeply enough into how the food is affecting your body, okay? So let's look at the anatomy of a grain. Okay, we have bran, which is the hard outer fiber, and it has a lot of minerals and antioxidants in it, okay? And then the germ, and the germ has protein, and it has vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and it has the phyto, which is like the embryo. That's the seed part. That's the seed part that when you plant it, it will grow, okay? If you plant it, it will grow. That's it. That's the germ, okay? And then there's the endosperm, which is full of starch, which is a lot of carbs. It has some protein in it, but it's full of starch, okay? So when refined flour is handed to you and say, okay, this is made with refined flour and it's enriched. Well, that's great, but they have taken all the bran out and they have taken all the germ. And those are the ones that have the most minerals and vitamins. And that is the stuff that the body needs to process if it is indeed going to assimilate and get those good nutrients from that. Now, when they say that it has been enriched, it means that they add irons and folates. Now, what my concern is this: what is the source of that iron and folate that they dump into this already powdery mass of flour? Okay, really? What happened with the one that came with the grain, the original grain, and they've cut it out? So when you're getting these foods, guys, remember that they have been stripped of the nutrients with added stuff in. Ooh, it's a little bit scary. Okay, so I tell you what I love. I love when people say to me, oh yes, but I eat whole grains. Okay, I eat whole grains, right? Well, the arguments against grains include the whole grain, and that would be talking about how there are how grains interfere with digestion and absorption. Okay, but that's not. They're called anti-nutrients and phytates. Is that how you say it? Phytates. Okay, and in the grain is this phytate and the anti-nutrients, okay, that interfere with digestion and absorption. Understand that grain is not the only one, or wheat is not the only one that has those. They're also found in nuts, seeds, legumes. Soaking beans really helps to eliminate that issue. Tubers, and in some fruits and vegetables. Again, that's why you need to decide for yourself how your body is responding to the different kinds of foods that you're eating, okay? I'm not saying do not eat this. I am saying you need to be aware so you can decide if your body really isn't processing correctly. You need to always, when you eat, you should thrive, okay? Now, don't forget that I'm not telling you not to eat grain, okay? I'm saying, again, look at what you are eating and look at how you feel. Now, in grain are also lectins, okay, which is a kind of a protein. It binds to sugar, and the receptors in the insulin receptors, and it binds to the intestine lining. Now, leptin resistance is associated with that type 2 diabetes, and so that can help with the regulation of energy or hurt you. So that's perhaps where some of the fatigue comes. Now I'm drawing my conclusion from there. It also can cause vascular stiffness and cardiovascular disease. That brings me to the use of leucine. And leucine is an amino acid that's very helpful and helps to back this off and make sure that instead of the body not being able to work and digest and the digestive issues that you get with the anti-nutrients, what the leucine does is it helps you to helps your body to make sure that it's burning fat and not muscle. Okay, so that when you are trying to diet, that's something to really use. Now, I was remiss and I did not look to see what the natural resources, because I got so excited when I realized, oh my goodness, the 180 program that I use and that several of my customers are using or friends are using is has leucine in it. It has leucine in every product. The shakes, you've seen me do a show on Diane Hagen, my friend Diane and her husband Jerry, that are doing so well, and the leucine is in that. The and also I've got Bev. I got a mage. I won't say your whole name, but Bev is doing really well, and I've got several people that are taking this product line. That is why I want to make sure you understand about how the foods work too. In addition to, you're already doing the 180 program from Shaklee, and you have to make sure that the food that you're eating, when you do eat, you can eat well, but you need to understand how food is going to affect you. So, that's a whole lot of stuff, isn't it? I recommend that you try to read Dr. Perlmutter's book. I barely graze the surface of what he has to say in that book. It's really fantastic. I have read Wheat Belly. That's good too. But the business about the brain and confusion and problems with cognitive issues really kind of freaks me out. And it's a way to stay perhaps away from having any kind of issues at all with our memories, which would be fun, which would be great. But in the meantime, guys, ask me about the 180 program. You can send me a private message, or you can comment in the section below and say, I'd like to hear about 180. And perhaps I'll have you over to come and try a shake, and we'll talk about it. Thanks very much. You have a wonderful day.